and welcome to the 2025 Ontario Provincial election, where we're going to choose the 44th Parliament for this remarkable province. I'm Jonathan Van Bilsen, joined by my co-host Chris Creamer, who's stationed at the Magic Board. Together we'll bring you a wealth of information, some conversations with special guests on topics that matter to us all, fascinating details, and most importantly, the live election results for Durham region as they come in. This election carries significant weight, having been called unexpectedly due to increasing challenges from our neighbours to the south. Alongside ongoing concerns about healthcare, the economy, and housing, we're now facing a potentially costly and unpredictable situation. Best wishes to all the candidates, regardless of the outcome. Your commitment and effort to make our region and province an exceptional place to live are truly appreciated. We're going to turn over now to Chris Creamer at the Magic Board for a closer look at our ridings. Chris?
Thanks, John. This is our Magic Board for this evening. If I touch it, boop, that is the results of the previous election back in 2022. As you can see, a lot of orange up north. That doesn't mean a lot of seats up north for the orange. Mostly blue down here. And if the polls are any indication so far this year, it's going to be a very blue night for the province of Ontario. If I zoom in right here, I can see this is Durham region as of 2022. Mostly blue with a little spot of orange down there in Oshawa. That's going to be a very important riding that we're watching tonight as the PC and NDP candidates seem to be neck and neck. It's going to be a fun night. We're here for the long haul, Jonathan. I can't wait to see what happens.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Chris. We're going to actually start out with a little video that was put together to give you an indication of some historic information about elections in the past. And we're going to follow that with a live shot from the Oshawa riding, because there could be some interesting things happening there. And then we're going to be joined by our special guest, Mr. John Henry, the chair of the region of Durham. So let's start with that video and take a look at some historic aspects of elections.
This building behind me, Queen's Park, has been the centre of Ontario's government for more than 130 years. Inside these walls, governments have risen and fallen. Elections have been fought and won, and occasionally called earlier than expected. Tonight, as Ontario once again heads into an election called before it was legally required, we look back at the history of Ontario's government, the times premiers have taken a gamble by calling early elections, and what this moment means for the future of the province. Ontario's first election was held in 1867, the same year Canada became a country. The province's first premier, John Sandfield Macdonald, led a coalition of conservatives and moderate liberals governing at a time before formal political parties dominated the landscape. But even in those early years, elections were fiercely contested, and the decision of when to go to the polls has always been a matter of political strategy. By the late 19th and early 20th century, Ontario's elections had settled into a familiar rhythm. Governments typically serve full terms before going back to the people for a fresh mandate. But as political parties became more organized, leaders began to realize that the timing of an election could be a powerful tool, one that could secure power for years or bring it to a sudden end. One of the first Ontario premiers to successfully use early elections as a political strategy was Mitchell Hepburn. Elected in 1934, Hepburn led the Liberals to a commanding victory during the depths of the Great Depression. 3 years later, he decided to call an early election. Why? Because his party was riding high in the polls, and the opposition was in complete disarray. It was a calculated move, and it worked. He won another majority. But not every early election is called for the same reason. In 1967, John Robarts, the progressive conservative premier, called an election a year early, not to gain a bigger majority, but to secure his legacy before retirement. His government had introduced major education reforms and infrastructure projects, and he wanted to go out on a high note. The result? Another PC majority. Sometimes, though, an early election can backfire. Perhaps the most famous case in Ontario's history was in 1990, when Premier David Peterson made what turned out to be a fatal miscalculation. Peterson had led the Ontario Liberals to a landslide victory in 1987, forming a majority government after working with the NDP in a confidence and supply agreement. But in 1990, just 3 years into his mandate, he saw an opportunity. The polls showed his party was still popular and an election wasn't required for another year. So he rolled the dice. He called an early election, confident Ontarians would give him another term. Instead, voters punished him for what they saw as political opportunism. The Liberals lost badly, and in a stunning upset, Bob Rae's NDP took power. The 1990 election reshaped Ontario's political landscape. The NDP, which had never formed a government in the province, suddenly found itself in charge during a global recession. Meanwhile, Peterson was forced to watch from the sidelines as his gamble cost him everything. The next decade saw even more political upheaval. After the NDP struggled with Ontario's economic downturn, voters turned to the Progressive Conservatives and Mike Harris in 1995. His government, focused on tax cuts and spending reductions, faced heated opposition but managed to win re-election in 1999. Unlike some of his predecessors, Harris waited the full 4 years before calling his second election. And that's the difference. Sometimes early elections work, and sometimes they don't. It all depends on timing, public sentiment, and the issues of the day. And that brings us to today. Doug Ford has now joined the ranks of premiers who have decided not to wait until the legally required date. His government is facing economic uncertainty with proposed U.S. tariffs threatening Ontario's manufacturing sector. By calling an early election, Ford is seeking a fresh mandate to tackle these challenges head-on. But will voters reward him for taking action, or will they see it as an unnecessary gamble? All of these political decisions, successful or not, have played out here at Queen's Park. This building has been the heart of Ontario's government since 1893, standing as a symbol of democracy in action. It has witnessed political triumphs and devastating defeats. It has seen majority governments and minority coalitions, economic booms and recessions, stability and upheaval. And tonight, it witnesses another chapter in Ontario's democratic story. As Ontarians cast their votes, they aren't just deciding who will lead the province for the next 4 years. They are shaping Ontario's future, just as generations of voters have done before them. Will Premier Ford's decision to call an early election prove to be a masterstroke or a mistake? That's up to the voters to decide. For now, back to you in the studio.
That was a fantastic bit of information, a bit of history there going back quite a while. Some very interesting faces. As I mentioned before, our guest tonight who's in the studio with us is Mr. John Henry, the chair of the region of Durham. And John and Chris, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair Henry, thanks for joining us here tonight for election night. It's an exciting night for all of us, all of Durham region, all of Ontario. Before we get into the election stuff, though, one thing I'm always interested about is the story of where you started. Now, you and I have spoken before. As I mentioned to you the other night, I used to buy furniture from you. Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated by your story. Can you sort of briefly tell us how you went from furniture salesman to regional chair of Durham region?
Well, you know, it is not your typical political story, and I was very lucky. When I first finished high school, I was able to start work as the guy that actually owned the company lived next door to my parents' house, so I started working there in high school. And when I finished high school, I worked for him, and I had a great career as a light machine mechanic. And in those days, you sat beside a master, and the person that trained me, his name was Giulio Rocchio, and he's like my adopted dad. And he always encouraged me to do more. And from there, my journey took me to Durham College and George Brown College, and then across the border to go to school in a number of different places. And I've had a great journey. And I met this amazing lady who happened to be a pharmacist when I came back. And Kathy and I have been married 35 years this year. We got two kids. But my start in politics really started when I came home one night and we were trying to get the cancer center built, and I was kind of complaining at the kitchen table that it was being delayed, and it was being delayed, a lot of politics involved. And Kathy said to me, well, companies hire you to fix their problems. Why don't you run for office? I ran for office. Wasn't successful the first time. Ran for office 3 years later. The cancer center hadn't been built. Was lucky. I was able to win, and then from there I challenged the mayor in the next election, and then I was mayor for 8 years in Oshawa, and now I've had the privilege of being the mayor of the fastest growing region, or not the mayor, but the chair of the fastest growing region in the province of Ontario, and I've been in office for 6 years as the chair.
And that goes back to your old mantra, right? More and more and more. Just keep going and until, well, what's next, right? What beyond share?
You know what? My journey up the mountain is not finished. I don't know where my next step will be. I've got almost a little less than 2 years left in my mandate, so there are always options, and I look forward to it. But I'm worried more about today and tomorrow than I am 2 years from today.
Well, we look forward to seeing what happens next with John Henry for sure. I'm going to take this back to the election that's happening tonight, though. Speaking of today, the provincial election happening, how often would you or the region in general engage with MPPs throughout Durham region?
On a fairly regular basis. I can tell you I talked to the Premier last Friday morning in Washington. That Durham is the fastest growing region in the province of Ontario, but we do so many things here. You know, our agricultural community is second to none. We're advanced manufacturing. We're leaders in healthcare. We are the energy capital of Canada. So there are all these moving pieces here within the region that makes us successful in a lot of ways. And I would say that I would probably interact with at least one of our members once every 2 weeks.
Wow.
Including the Premier on occasion.
Incredible. But the province does offer a lot of services, not just to Durham, but all across Ontario. Mm-hmm. Of those services that are offered, what would you say would Durham region need the most?
Well, it's not so much what Durham needs, it's what Durham can do for the rest of the province. So being leaders in nuclear energy, clean energy, is a big part of what Durham is, and OPG and their talented workforce, generate about 33% of the electricity for the province of Ontario, but it's what their employees do in the community when they're not generating electricity. And then you look at in healthcare, there's been some great announcements. Durham has always looked at some of the biggest problems we have to find ways to do it. So our partnership with the province, Lakeridge Health and Queen's University with the new medical campus at Lakeridge, and then continuing to just be leaders in a number of areas. In fact, yesterday at council, we were recognized as a leader by FCM. It's not just about what they can do for us, it's about what we're able to do for the entire province, our community. Our agricultural community is simply amazing. Not only do they feed us, they feed the rest of the province and beyond.
It's almost like what JFK said in his inauguration speech. Mm-hmm. Ask not what the country can do for me, but what I can do for the country.
Chris, I'm just going to interject for 1 second, if I could. I've just been told that they are looking at a Conservative majority, without question. So that took all of about 12 minutes. And so we'll just see how the night progresses. But the numbers are coming in. They're coming in pretty fast. So sorry to interrupt your conversation.
That's okay.
But I just thought you might want to know that.
All right. He interrupted JFK.
I'm sorry.
But that was important news.
Yes, it is.
Well, as we're speaking to Jonathan, I think you had a couple of questions you'd like to ask the chair.
Well, we were talking earlier, you brought up the thing about the topic about heavy equipment, and I find that very interesting. We just take so much for granted. When a snowplow goes down my road, it gets rid of the snow, I don't think about it again. But when something breaks on that snowplow, that part has to come from somewhere. And I guess the Durham region's reliance on partners like the U.S. is very great, right?
It's every community from coast to coast will have some part of their operations where they're dependent on product from the United States. Whether it be, parts for your vehicles, specialized equipment, or in the case of Durham region, one of our biggest challenges in wastewater and drinking water. 70% of the chemicals used to treat water and wastewater come from the United States. Right. And a lot of the equipment that goes into your water treatment plant, those pumps are built by companies that are not located in Canada. So right. There is a lot of things, when you hear the conversation about tariffs, it affects right down to our level of government, mm-hmm. and will create some increased costs for us.
Mm-hmm. I understand, just looking at the board here, that Todd McCarthy, the incumbent for Durham region, has been projected as the winner without question. Mm-hmm. So back to that issue. When tariffs are imposed, the country that imposes the tariffs are actually the one that has to pay it, right? So this has always been a sort of a double-sided double-edged sword. So somebody in the U.S. makes a product, they want to ship it to Canada, we make a product, we ship it to the U.S. The U.S. has to pay for that product, and they are going to be charged an extra 25% on that product. So it doesn't affect us at this point. Well, I guess what will affect us is they choose not to buy from us anymore, correct?
Well, it's more than that. A tariff is like a tax, and the people that pay for it are people like us.
It is a tax. It's absolutely a tax.
And it's the end user, and it's the people that live in those communities. And what really concerns me is when a conversation happens in one community that affects another community. In today's economy is so intertwined that, a widget made here might travel to the United States to be put into a component that comes back to be assembled in something else. But the people that do that work on both sides are just trying to feed their family and pay their mortgage. Right. So I'm deeply concerned about how it will affect the individual families on both sides of the border.
That's always the way, because the 30,000-foot picture doesn't look at that.
No.
They don't look at that. I've just been told that Laurie Scott has also been declared winner in Kawartha Lakes, Halliburton, and Brock. So she's a PC incumbent as well. Mm-hmm. So more information there. So do you have a lot of dealings with the provincial government on issues other than the typical housing, healthcare sort of thing? But are there other issues that people don't realize that you constantly liaise with the provincial government on?
It could be an issue that happens in the course of a week where I'll just pick up the phone and call any one of our MPPs and have a personal conversation. We work well together. I have a relationship with all our MPPs, and Durham Region's kind of unique. We have 7 ridings, right. And you just can't look at an individual riding. You have to look at the entire region. So when you're talking about healthcare or nuclear or advanced manufacturing, all that intertwines, because the people that work in those plants, take the truck plant in Oshawa, don't necessarily live in Oshawa. They live throughout the entire region and beyond. So important issues. It's not uncommon for us to schedule a meeting and meet as a group, or I'll just pick up the phone and call whoever we need to talk to about a particular issue. And, like I said a little while ago when we were talking, last week we had a fairly significant issue, and the Premier's really good about giving his phone number. Yeah. So I sent him a text message, and he texted me back. It was before 7 o'clock in the morning last Friday, and I was able to phone him and talk about a very important issue for us here in Durham Region, and it happened to talk about the GO train. Mm-hmm. So the GO train and going east is important about getting families, to work and to home, and getting them off the highway. And so it was a quick conversation just to say that we're on still going in the same direction. And I'm proud to say, if you drive across First Avenue right now, you'll see the old Nob Hill Farms plant being taken down, and that's the next step in getting the GO train out to Clarington. Right.
You'll be happy to know that don't throw that phone number away, because you'll probably be able to use it for quite a while. David Piccini from Northumberland, Peterborough South, has also been confirmed as a re-election. He's the incumbent from there as well. So at this rate, we'll probably be out of here in about 20 minutes the way it's going. But Chris, did you want to?
Yeah, and apologies if this isn't part of your portfolio, I suppose, for lack of a better term. But you mentioned a GO train. The Prime Minister recently announced that they're going to do the high-speed rail from Toronto up to Quebec City. Is that going to run through Durham Region, and is there any sort of timeline that you know of when that might be ready?
Well, it'll run through Durham Region, but unfortunately there won't be a stop in Durham Region. And it'll run through the airport lands.
Okay.
And we were hoping, and we had written to the government and thought we made an argument on the reason why there should be a stop in Durham. It would service not only Durham Region, but York Region, and it would stop people from having to go downtown Toronto or go to Peterborough to get the train. So we'll continue to advocate for that, but right now it doesn't include a stop in Durham, and that's upsetting.
Is there a timeline for that project, as far as you know?
Not yet. No.
Is it going to happen in my lifetime? That's what I want to
You know what? I would like to say yes, but it's a lot of work to put a high-speed rail in, and that's a very old rail line. So I don't know the amount of work that it will take to get it up to speed.
Absolutely.
Let me interject again.
Sure.
I was just watching the numbers and the Oshawa riding. It's very, very neck and neck between Jennifer French and Jerry Wett. It's about 500 votes apart right now. So that is the one to watch, because they did have some issues there with the Liberal candidate, as we all know. So it'll be an interesting riding to watch. John, you've been in politics for a long time. So what's it like being in the election? Like, actually, how much work is it? How nervous do you get?
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
It seems like the election day will never get here. Then the day is here, and then it drags out, and then it's over. But it's a lot of work to campaign as a councillor, or in a ward, or as a mayor who has to canvass an entire city, or as a regional chair. I have 2,500 square kilometers that I have to canvass, and it is. I'm an elected chair. I'm not I'm not appointed, so it is a lot of work.
That started with you, right? Because Roger Anderson was appointed, correct?
Roger, the last time Roger was elected.
He was elected.
Prior to that, he'd been appointed.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew it was somewhere in that transition, but Lauren Coe has been re-elected, as has Peter Bethlen-Valvey. So far, nothing has changed. Everybody gets their own chairs back at Queen's Park.
Oh, the good news is my phone numbers are all the same phone numbers, so far.
Oh, that's good. That's great. All right.
Want to go back to? Okay, so to get to some more heavy stuff here. Strengthening relationships with Indigenous communities and diverse groups remains a priority in political discussions. Does Durham see opportunities for enhanced collaboration? And is there any room for the province to assist in this regard?
Well, we have a great relationship with the Mississaugas of Sququoc Island, and the chief, Kelly Rocca, is amazing to work with. They do some amazing things up on the island, and we're proud to work with them. And it's important to continue to carry on the conversation and ask, and have them involved in some of our decision making. So I think we can only build on that. And I look forward to the future work we can do together. It benefits all of us.
Do I have time to ask one dumb guy question?
John, or absolutely, Chris.
I have a dumb guy question. Sure. Is there a difference, like Durham Region is a regional municipality, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a difference between that and a county, say like Simcoe County or York County, or is it just a name?
It's different. They have wardens. I'm a chair. Mm-hmm. They operate in a different way. I spent today in Cobourg at a nuclear event with Mayor Foster and the Mayor of Cobourg, and they operate the process of operations the same. Titles are a little bit different, but
it's more of a title thing more than anything else.
Yeah, that would be the easy. The rules are all the same.
Oh, okay. Well, that's all I have for you, John Henry.
John, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you coming in.
It's been my pleasure.
Taking time from your busy schedule. I know you don't sit around much and just watch Netflix. I know you're very, very busy at what you do, and I think everybody in the region appreciates what you do.
Well, the great part about this is it's a way for me to say thank you to everybody that believed in me, my coaches, my teachers, the people that invested time in me, and for my wife and kids that give me the opportunity to do this. I'm very lucky, and I'm very thankful.
Well, Doug Ford said yesterday, I think he said that he wants to be premier forever. He wants to beat Hazel McCallion. I think you're going to be chair forever.
Well, thank you. I don't know about forever, but
thanks so
at
much.
least for another 2 years.
All right, we're going to flip over to the numbers to show you the numbers for Ajax, which is a very, very close riding right now. Let's take a look at that. And that is close, my goodness. So we've got 13,000 for the Liberal candidate, and just leading a little bit. We've got 329, sorry, for Rob Surjanic, and 13,299 for Patrice Barnes, which is the PC candidate. So they're like 30 votes apart. And then the next one is the NDP, which is at 2,100. So that's quite a ways. Jennifer French is at 17,400, and Jerry Willett is at 15,998, so 16,000. So they're about 1,000 votes apart. And that's going to be quite the upset there, because or at least quite the challenge there, because Jennifer French beat Jerry Willett out about 8 years ago, and he's come back to see what he can do to take some revenge. Chris, welcome back to this side of the fence.
Thank you. It feels nice being behind a desk. I feel of importance now.
That's great. John Henry's such an informative person, isn't he?
Yeah, I could talk to him all day.
Absolutely. So something that we were going through that history clip, I don't know if you remember seeing that. Did you know that we had a party in 1919 who won? It was the UFO party. You aware of that?
Well, you're pulling my leg. That's what you're doing.
No, absolutely. The UFO party, and stood for the United Farmers of Ontario. And it was actually a legitimate party, and they won the election with 43 some odd votes, which is quite interesting. So
And you didn't campaign for them?
No, I didn't. No. I did not, no. But, so some of the people, we've got some information on some of the people here. Laurie Scott, for example, who was the incumbent in Northumberland, in the Kawartha and Brock and Haliburton. Laurie has been in politics for quite a while. She was born and raised in Kinmont, Ontario, and she was a former registered nurse, a federal progressive conservative MP's daughter. So she's been in this business for quite some time. It's quite interesting. She was a big advocate of human trafficking and women's involvement in public life, something that she's very involved in, very near and dear to her heart, as well as rural issues. She started in 2003 and was reelected multiple times. She's done a lot of good things up there. In 2022, she came in with 56% of the vote. Very strong supporter, as I said, of rural Ontario. So, quite interesting. The numbers for Ajax Pickering are coming in again. And, the advanced poll numbers, sorry, for Ajax Pickering. Okay, while we're waiting for those, there we are. So the advanced polls for Ajax was 98,000 registered voters. 5,500 ballots were cast. So voter turnout in advanced polls were 5.67, which is relatively low. And in 2022, there were 94,000, so 4,000 less voters. And the ballots cast ahead of time were 37,000 compared to 5,500 this time. So the voter turnout for 2022 was 39% in Ajax.
That's a pretty close race so far in Ajax.
It is, absolutely.
And
absolutely.
I mean, that's almost with like 2/3 of the polls already reporting there.
I know.
It's very close. Back in 2022, the Liberal candidate finished only 5% back, and we see, like, look at that. That's 80 votes separating.
That's right.
You talk about every vote matters here, folks. 80 votes separating first from second over there in Ajax.
That's right, absolutely. It is really close in Ajax. It's 300 votes apart right now. So Patrice Barnes is at 13,706, and Bob Surjanic, who's the Liberal, is now at 13,620. So it's flipped around a bit, where it was he was in a lead before, and now he's not. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we have in our studio, we have a fellow who you may know. His name is Kirk Kemp, and he is the owner of Algoma Orchards, and a large employer and a large organization in Durham. And of course, he has quite a few things to say about himself and about elections in general. So let's take it over to Chris and Kirk.
Thanks, John. Kirk, thanks for joining us here today. We're going to talk about Algoma Orchards, which you are the owner of course. It's one of Durham's largest companies. Do you mind sharing a brief overview of what you guys do over there?
Sure, thanks, Chris. It's nice to be here tonight. We grow apples in the Newcastle, Beaumont area. We have about 1,500 acres of orchard, and we also buy some apples from other growers around the province. And we package them up for retailers in Ontario and sometimes ship to Western Canada and Eastern Canada. And we also make apple juice.
Oh, okay.
So that's what we do.
Now, you mentioned some of the places you ship these apples to. Do you ever have to move products between Canada and the United States? You know, we're talking a lot about tariffs today. Does that have any effect on you or your business?
Well, we actually do ship some apples into the United States, and it's definitely going to be an issue. When it first got announced the tariffs were supposed to happen a couple days down the road, we loaded 3 trucks one day to get them across the border before the tariff came, but then it got delayed for a month, and so, yeah, it's going to have a negative effect on the apple business in Ontario and Canada.
Are you getting the trucks loaded up all ready to go for March 4th coming up?
Well, we've been shipping a lot.
Yeah. So how might the tariffs affect it, though? Like, is there an actual, like, does it affect labor? Does it affect shipping costs, packaging?
It's going to be a multiple faceted effect. You know, we try and source as much local as we can, but there's products that we use to package our fruit in, and other consumables we use that we have to buy from America. So when those tariffs hit, they're going to add cost to what we do. I mean, Canada naturally imports a lot of apples from the United States, and we export a fair number. So there's going to be issues that we're going to have to deal with, and we'll just have to deal with it when it comes.
Is there any practical way to address or work through these challenges? Do you have anything ready to go?
Yeah, we are shipping a few extra, and we hope that the fact that if there's tariffs there's going to be less apples moving back and forth. So if there's less American apples coming here, more apples will be sold. Canadian apples will be sold in Canadian stores, and we've already seen it. Our sales have gone up in the last couple of weeks because people are starting to focus to buy Canadian.
Oh, good. Okay, so that could have a positive effect on.
Yeah, I think it's going to wake us up. It's going to be very stressful for a lot of businesses, and nobody looks forward to it. But we're going to have to deal with it, and maybe we should just all work a little harder and show with the rest of the world and ourselves how good Canada can be.
Amen to that. Jonathan, I think you had a few questions.
I'm just curious, Kirk. My understanding, if the U.S. imposes tariffs, then when your apples make it to the border, the U.S. has to pay those tariffs, right? So will Canada, do you think, impose similar tariffs on goods that affect you back and forth? Or is it just going to be that they're going to not buy as many because they're going to be too expensive, they're going to do their own thing? Like, where exactly is it going to affect you?
We're anticipating that if there's tariffs on Canadian apples going into America, that it'll be significant enough that there would be less buying of Canadian apples.
Okay.
We're very hopeful, and we've been working with all levels of government to make sure that they counter tariff the apples coming this way, and that way it might help even out the playing field.
Interesting. So the election tonight is obviously very near and dear to you because the outcome is going to affect who you deal with and so forth, and especially if you already have rapport with people, right, that sort of thing. Are your employees in general, like you have a massive amount of employees, well over 100, 200 or whatever, are they affected mentally, do you think, by this whole thing? Are they concerned about their jobs or stuff? Are you feeling anything?
I think our employees are probably more concerned about the overall effect on what it's going to do for costs for their general living.
Right.
We kind of reassure them that, you know, we sell the largest majority of our fruit right in Canada, so it's not going to have a huge negative effect on us. But I can see it in people's discussions around the lunchroom that, you know, they're concerned how much it's going to cost for food and all this. It's not good for anybody's enthusiasm.
Absolutely not. And it's going to be a burden on you as the management of the company too, because you want your employees to be happy. And even though you can't control it, you still want them to be happy. I guess the good thing is that we will always eat apples.
Well, that's what we hope. They're healthy and good for you, and the more people eat apples, the better it is for everyone.
And apple juice, apple cider, everything made from apples.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, correct.
Thanks very much, Chris.
One last question here, and then I'll let you get out of here. With the election going on tonight, let's talk about how the provincial government, how they could support your industry, whether locally or all across of Ontario.
Well, we've had good discussions with our local members, and they're working hard to make sure the federal government will counter-tariff the apples if they tariff our apples going that way. And we've had a great working relationship with our local members, and I'm pretty confident that our members, not only in Durham but in Northumberland, Peterborough South, are going to get returned. And you know what? The Ford government has done a great job for farming in general for Ontario, and we look forward to working with them in the next 4 years.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Kirk Kemp from Algoma Orchards. Thanks for giving us a heads up on what's going on in the apple industry.
Thank you. It's been nice to be here.
Back to you, John.
That was a great interview. It's always nice to listen to people from the business community. We've got another interview, actually, with someone who is with us tonight, Mr. Terry Vos. And Terry is the owner and operator of Vos, your independent grocer in Port Perry, but he's also the president of the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce up there. So again, over to you, Chris, with Mr. Vos.
Problem.
We're going to talk about your role with the Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, right now in this election, there's a lot of talk about tariffs, how they're going to affect businesses throughout, you know, not just Canada, but even local businesses as well. Do tariffs have an effect on small local businesses in North Durham or Durham at large?
They will have a big effect on a lot of businesses. We have businesses that actually deal directly with the states for their products, and products that come back and forth for processing. And then the thing that we can offer is just the information. We know just as much as the general public knows right now, but we get some information just a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, and we're the liaison to contact with business that have concerns or questions or how to process issues. But we'll be there to support them, and that's the biggest part of what the Chamber can offer right now with these tariffs coming in.
Now, you know, bigger picture. Explain, what does the Chamber of Commerce do in general?
We're a source of education and communication. We can speak on behalf of companies and employers. We speak to our municipality government. We do with region. We deal with municipal and provincial governments. We are the voice of those businesses that need to be heard. Squeaky wheel gets the oil, and we do a lot of advocating for the business and try to cut through red tape and try to get the understanding and knowledge to the companies that need it fast and quick so we can get through these times.
Now, this is election night.
It is.
This is a big night for politics. Does the Chamber interact regularly with elected officials, with a member of provincial parliament?
Once they're elected, yes. We do have a great relationship with all levels of our government. We have the opportunity to meet with them periodically and just have a kind of a coffee and a chat at the office. We give our concerns, we give some feedback, and they give us some information. So, for example, we've had some conversations already, and they're giving us heads up to what to look out for. We've shared that information, and that's kind of really great for us to have that relationship with our government.
That's great, and it gives you a chance to prepare for anything that might be coming. You're not caught off guard.
Absolutely.
I believe Jonathan had a few questions to ask about your role as the owner of the Independent, Vos Independent.
Okay. Hi, Terry. Glad you're able to make it. Thanks. So I'm curious, the food in your grocery store doesn't just come from one place and it lands in your store. It goes back and forth. And does it go across the border as well?
Absolutely. There's product that crosses our border just like an automobile. It goes back and forth constantly.
Okay.
There could be product that would be harvested in the States, shipped for Canada for processing, could be shipped back to the U.S. for packaging. That goes on all the time. And the example I use with a lot of people is Canadian beef, for example. Mm-hmm. We have limited number of processing plants for our beef. And what happens when the demand comes a little bit higher, we send our beef to the U.S. to be processed and get sent back. But the policy is that country of slaughter is country of origin. So if a cow that's been in Alberta its entire life crosses that border for one day and gets processed, it's now U.S. beef. And that's what we have to understand, too, that product is constantly going back and forth, back and forth.
So these tariffs then are obviously going to have a massive effect on your industry, from all elements of your industry.
It will. It will.
Which I assume will translate into some sort of increased cost. There's no way you can avoid that. So are companies, large grocery chains, what will they be doing, or what do you think they'll be doing to help the consumer to ease the burden of that? Because obviously that cost has to be passed on, I get that. But what will they do to ease that burden a little bit?
I think what you're going to see is a lot more of the Canadian product to be promoted within the business. When crops come available, you'll see that they'll be the forefront of the focus of advertising and marketing and specials, which will help generate a little bit lower prices for the consumers. You'll also see that we'll put a little bit more focus on local products too. We won't be promoting products that we can't, Kiwi is not from the States, but we've got corn, for example. You'll see us promote Ontario products in corn harvest times because we always get Florida first, and then we get Canadian corn. Right. So we'll get the opportunity to promote the Canadian a little bit more and better pricing for the consumer.
So you're going to start growing oranges up in Skugog, I guess, then to get that thing.
If we could, we would.
So do you have on your shelves, labels for Canadian products? Have you started doing that, or is that a plan?
Actually, we just started last week. We took 400 items, 20 top items in 20 top categories, and labeled as Canadian product. And what it is, it's either Canadian product that's being produced or processed, or majority of the ingredients are Canadian. Okay. So we're doing a lot more of that. Just trying to give the consumers a little bit of an opportunity to make that conscious decision if they want to shop for a Canadian product, that it's a little bit more visual to them. And we're hoping that we'll see more of that come through.
Okay. On that same note, can you just explain very briefly what the difference between a Canadian product or made in Canada or processed in Canada? Like, there's so many different labels.
So Canadian product has to be, I believe it's 97% Canadian, okay, which means the ingredients, the processing, all that. A product, and that'll be a product of Canada. And then made in Canada, it could be something that is harvested in the United States, shipped to Canada, and the product is made up here in Canada. And I don't know the exact percentage of it, but there has to be a certain percentage of it processed here with our labor force, our packaging, and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. And lastly, I just wanted to get your opinion on a provincial government, because tonight is actually election night.
Yes.
Does someone in your position work closely with government for any specific reason, or do you just sort of keep an arm's length relationship?
I think we keep it an arm's length relationship. Okay. We have to work within our business structure, and we have to work with who's ever running the government, so we have to have great relationships with everybody. So we're kind of like the neutral. We'll be supportive whoever gets in, and we'll be there to work with them.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions. Chris?
No, Terry, I just want to say thanks for coming here and telling us about how tariffs can affect different aspects of industry in Canada.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris and Terry. We're going to go now to the Oshawa offices of Jennifer French, who's the NDP incumbent. She has been re-elected, and things are getting pretty wild in Oshawa. So Jennifer French ran quite the campaign. She was up against Jerry Ouellette, who, as I mentioned before, was in this industry. He had, I think, 3 or 4 elections that he won, and then he more or less retired, took some time off, and now he's come back, and he gave it a pretty good run, but Jennifer beat him out with 19,962 votes. So that's quite interesting. We have another guest in the studio. This time we have a politician, the mayor of Uxbridge, His Worship, Dave Barton.
Thanks, John. Mayor Barton, thanks for coming down here to talk to us today. I wanted to start with your history, how you got involved in politics in Uxbridge.
Well, so I worked in the private sector. Actually, let's back up for a moment. Uxbridge, we're low-key, so it's not Mayor Barton, it's not your worship, it's Dave.
Okay.
Dave,
how did you get started?
That totally works. So I worked in the private sector for about 18 years in high tech and sales. And then I got packaged out, which was exactly what I wanted, because I was traveling about 3 weeks a month. And I was looking for a way to give back. So I got on a couple different committees. And I found that democracy wasn't working in my favor. I was trying to do a little bit more. I was trying to push a little bit harder, and I lost a couple votes. And then there was, unfortunately, a councillor passed away. Councillor Pat McHugh passed away. And there was a by-election. I thought, I wonder what it would be like to run a campaign. So in the last 15 minutes, I put my name forward. There was 8 different people on the ballot that time, and I jumped in, created a website, got literature, and started knocking on doors, and fortunately I won, and the rest is sort of history.
And then you went from councillor to mayor.
In similar way, right? Yeah. I found that I was losing votes that were really important to me, and thought if I'm going to be here, I wonder if I can get in earlier in the process and try and make it so whatever decision council makes, it's good for Uxbridge. And we did it again. I ran the campaign, and fortunately, the voters supported me.
Nice. Okay. So we're talking about politics tonight,
Yep.
obviously. With the provincial election here tonight, how often would your council typically engage with the MPP for the Durham riding?
So it's weekly for sure, probably more than once a week. We are so incredibly fortunate. You know, Peter Bessenfalvey is our MPP, also Minister of Finance, and he is an extremely hardworking, bright individual who cares. So I always say this, and it's always a little bit odd when there's other MPPs in the room, but I always say we have the best MPP in government by far.
I'm sure they understand.
I think they do, and they probably agree with me, to be honest.
It's like that world's best dad mug. You don't actually mean you're better than all the other dads.
But in this case, he is, I would say. So again, don't tell any other MPPs that we have to work with, but Peter's phenomenal.
Okay, if there are any MPPs watching tonight. So what type of provincial services are most needed in your township?
So the things that we've been advocating for are a new hospital, new long-term care. We got the first ever urban provincial park announced in the last couple years for Uxbridge, and those are the kind of the big ones that we've been working on. And then there's all the other things that you work on that kind of would fit into most communities, like how do we best serve the youth, or how do we best serve seniors, and all those other things as well.
Trail capital of Canada?
Trail capital of Canada, and now with the first ever urban provincial park.
That's amazing.
So what that was all about is 1,350 acres that have had no trespassing signs on them for my entire life, maybe beyond that, are now open to the public, and we have people on those lands. And this is because of the work of our MPP, Peter Bessenfalvey, my council, our staff, and then number one, who got us going, is a gentleman by the name of John McCutcheon. Mm-hmm. John is over 90 years old. He came to us really early and said, I'm happy to donate my 80-acre estate, my house and this property, but I'll donate this only if you secure the 1,350 acres for the public to use.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We need more people like that, don't
we? We do, although John treats us really well. So we're just fortunate enough to have John McCutcheon.
Well, we're all fortunate to have that.
Yeah.
John, you had a couple of questions for the mayor?
Just a few. So, Dave, the big issues, housing, employment, that type of thing, everybody talks about that, and that's very important. I'm sure it's important in Uxbridge, in Uxbridge as well. But from a local perspective, what do you look for from a provincial government, like internet access, water, which I know is regional, but does the province get involved?
So I wear a couple different hats. So from an Uxbridge perspective, we're in the Greenbelt, we're in the Oak Ridges Moraine, we are monitored. We're controlled by the Lake Simcoe Protection Plan. So water, and especially wastewater, is highly regulated, and that's what's limiting our growth today. So it's Greenbelt from a physical perspective, but then all of our runoff and all of our wastewater goes into Lake Simcoe eventually through our treatment plants. So it's more about that from an Uxbridge perspective. But then my other hat is I'm chair of Public Works of the region of Durham, and that's where we got a $33.8 million grant as this water enabling infrastructure piece that we got. Right. And so we also worked with the province on that through King Esarma, who's the Ministry of Infrastructure.
Okay, interesting. What about seniors? I mean, every community is getting older.
Yep.
People are getting older. Seniors require more care, and I understand healthcare is obviously an issue. If you ask any senior, healthcare is the first thing on their mind.
Yep.
But what about support for things like community care and that comes provincially, right?
It does, and so we work with Raymond Cho. Yeah. I don't if you haven't met Raymond Cho, again, he's a gentleman who's over 80 years old. Mm-hmm. Every time I see him, he gives me a giant hug, and we talk about golf. But he's the Minister of Seniors and Accessibility.
Okay.
And again, we've worked really closely together on seniors grants. We started with things like Community, where we'd get a whole bunch of seniors together. We'd get a physician or a pharmacist or whoever to talk about issues that were important to those seniors. Sometimes it was the DRPS.
Okay.
And we'd sort of put on lunch and tea and really educate them on some current issues. And then, the pandemic hit, so we went virtual for that. And then now we're back to meeting in person. So
are you finding that seniors are sort of the more that they learn, the more educated they are, the easier it is to work with them?
So I think just like anyone else, you want to make sure that we are serving our young people or our older people, and this is one way that we can provide services for them.
Okay.
And we find out really quickly. If they want to hear it, they tell us they liked it. If they didn't like the message, I don't know if you know all that many seniors, but they typically tell you what's on their minds, which is great.
This will come as a shock to you, but I am one.
I wouldn't. I was thinking early 20s, but maybe not.
Chris?
I don't know why we bring him along to these things.
Again, he's from Port Perry. What do you expect?
This is the topic of the night.
Yeah.
So I have to ask you about the tariffs coming from the United States. Are there any unique industries in Uxbridge that may be affected more than others with the tariffs, or any that may require any provincial advocacy?
So it's hard to say, right? Because we don't really know what's going to be included and we don't know what's not. Certainly, the people that live in Uxbridge work all over the place. So some are working at OPG and in our nuclear power plants. Some are working in the automotive sector. It's really a mixed bag.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we look at all of Durham region, it'll represent Uxbridge fairly well. So what's important to the people in Durham are important to the people in Uxbridge. From an industry in Uxbridge perspective, we have a number of different manufacturers, but most of the ones that I'm thinking of right now, they concentrate on the Canadian market for that aspect of it. So certainly it affects our residents. And when you look at the impact that a 25% tariff will have on our economy as a whole, we need to make sure that we've got a government in there that can make those really difficult decisions. And I was thinking about this earlier in the day. If you think of it from a municipal standpoint, do we invest in soccer or do we invest in baseball? And you can never make everyone happy if you have a limited amount of money. I think the 4-year mandate makes sense because they're going to have to make some tough decisions. You can't make everyone happy with what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of people hurting, and you need to be able to think beyond Trump, beyond the 4 years, to make the decisions that have to be made because they will not be popular over the next number of years. And you can't be thinking of an election when you're making the really tough choices. So that's sort of my take, and I always kind of bring things back home, and that's when you think of, do you spend $100,000 on one sport or another?
I appreciate the sports metaphor. Thank you.
I thought you'd like that.
That really helps me. He says, don't call me Mayor Barton, but I will call him Mayor Barton.
Okay.
Mayor Dave Barton, thanks so much for joining us today. And thanks for telling us about your town and your role.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks. Back to you, John.
Thanks very much, Chris and Mayor Barton. Great camaraderie between Uxbridge and Port Perry constantly. We're also going to listen to the mayor of Scugog in a few minutes. But I did want to point out that there's quite the upset happening in Bonnie Crombie's riding. She is in second place to the Conservative, who is the mother-in-law of Patrick Brown. So that's quite a thing. If that is an upset, and if Bonnie Crombie does not win that riding, it's going to be very difficult to be the leader of the Liberal Party and not have a seat in the House. So we'll watch that one very close. There's about 2,000 votes apart right now between those two candidates. So we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, let's listen to Chris and the mayor of Scugog, Her Worship Wilma Wotten.
Thanks, John. Mayor Wotten, first, I want to ask you a question about your past involvement in community service. I'm a bit of a history geek, I'm not afraid to say.
Okay.
The other day I was browsing through the town's newspaper archives, as one does, and I came across an article from 25 years ago that congratulated you on winning a volunteer award. And I thought, my goodness, Mayor Wotten has been involved in this community doing what she does for quite some time.
I have. Yeah, actually, I started as a softball coach when I was 18. And I have been involved in some capacity in our community ever since.
That's amazing.
Yes. It's a very long time, actually.
So we'll talk about the election now. So speaking about a provincial election and an MPP, we've had Todd McCarthy representing your riding for 2-3 years now. How often would you or would your council interact with the MPP for Durham?
Actually, we have quite a bit of interaction, but that is because the minister the minister is he's very involved in our community. He comes to most events whenever he's available, so we have interaction then. But I, as mayor, would say that he and I meet quarterly, either over coffee or for lunch, sometimes just to chat, sometimes to discuss issues, just whatever the mood of the day is. So we have a very good relationship, I would say, and I'm very proud of what he does for us, and you know, I think partnership is what it's all about.
And you endorsed
I did
McCarthy,
endorse
I saw that.
for that very reason.
Because he's so connected to the community and makes an effort to be there.
And he makes a very big effort to be part of everything. So
speaking of that, what type of services would a community like Scugog, or Scugog in particular, require from the province?
Well, my first thought is, of course, funding. And we do receive a lot of funding. In Scugog's eye, perhaps not in comparison to southern towns and places. But then I'm very cognizant of that even with that funding, it all comes out of one pocket. It does. So sometimes I wonder if we'd be better to perhaps have a higher tax levy and not have to rely so much on the provincial funding, because then it goes directly into our community.
John, I believe you had a couple of questions you'd like to ask the mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Wotten, I'm curious, everybody is concerned about the big issues, the healthcare, employment, housing, and so forth, as are people in Scugog, no doubt. But on a smaller scale, like what does a township like Scugog require from a provincial government?
Well, I think, again, we have the same concerns as the big, the big issues are big issues as well.
What about things like water, internet, that kind of stuff? Is that something that...
So let me explain that, you know, the region looks after our water.
Okay.
The province has committed $175 million to water improvements. For us to benefit from that, being a lower tiered municipality, it goes through the region.
Okay.
So, yes, we could use it, absolutely 100%, but it does go through the region. Right. The internet, I know that you know, they've put $4 billion into expanding high-speed internet in rural communities, and we are benefiting also from that through the regional service corporation, and they've brought it out to Uxbridge. They've gone down some of our concession roads, and they're continuing to build it out. But yes, without them, those things would not happen. Okay. For sure.
What about things such as seniors? I mean, there's a big growing community of seniors. Mental health becomes an issue, especially since COVID. It's much more prevalent. Do you look towards the government, for the provincial government, for funding for that type of thing, or does that come from different channels?
It comes from the province.
It does.
But to the agencies and social service groups that look after that, like community care, for example, right. CAMH, you know, like they all get the funding, and then it filters into. But we did get funding from the province for our primary health care team right. Last fall, which was a huge boost. It meant that they could move forward and develop a team in Scugog. Mm-hmm. So, you know, again, it's all money, and we'll take whatever they'll give us, but we have to be cognizant of
right.
the pocket.
Right. Of course. Chris?
One last question, then I'll let you get along. Obviously, the talk of the night is tariffs.
Yes.
I'm sure everyone's getting sick and tired of talking about it at this point, but it's still such a big issue for everyone in this country. Does that situation with the tariffs in the U.S., would that have a direct effect on a town like Scugog?
I think it'll have a huge effect on our being such an agricultural municipality, a huge effect for our farmers. not to mention our other businesses, of course, like our grocery stores and everything. But, 70% of what we as Canadians ship to the U.S. goes and gets produced and then is shipped back. So it's quite a circle. But I think there's a big concern, and rightly so, about what the costs will look like. We just did a cost estimate for a building in January. We got preliminary costing, and today we got an updated preliminary costing, which reflected potential tariffs, and it was about $250,000 more for the building. So, yeah, I think everybody should be concerned if that's the direction that's going to happen.
Got to sign that contract before the tariffs go into effect.
Yeah, well, that's what we did talk about that.
Well, thanks so much for coming down to talk to us. It was an honor to have you here, Mayor.
Thank you for
Mayor Wilma Wotten of Scugog.
Thank you for having me.
Back to you, Jonathan.
All right, thanks very much, Chris and Mayor Wotten. It's always great to hear from the smaller outlying areas because they have so much influence, there's so much happening in those places, and a lot of times they get overshadowed by the big picture. We're going to take a look at Ajax right now, the numbers for Ajax. It's a very, very tight race there, as you can see. They're still within 300 votes, give or take, and it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Chris, you're back on this side of the fence. Welcome back.
Well, I kind of missed the couch. It was a lot more comfortable there.
So I wanted to talk to you because, Chris, your forte is sports, right? You run sportslogos.net.
Yes.
Very successful, sports brand.
Yeah,
company.
We focus on fashion in the sports industry. Yeah.
So there's been a lot of talk tonight about the U.S.-Canada situation. How does that affect sports teams and individuals?
Well, if the U.S. does annex Canada, it would help Canadian teams win the Stanley Cup a little more often.
Okay.
That's for sure. But it looks like we're looking at some highlights from the Four Nations face-off last week.
That was a week ago tonight. What a different night.
Tonight. Well, geez.
Wow.
Well, so what a unifying moment for all of Canada this moment was right here. And, you talk about we're on election night here. People can get a little divisive with politics, but on this night, everybody in our riding, in our country, was rooting for the exact same thing. And this was such a great moment for Canada and for Canadians in general, especially with what's going on in politics right now. To be honest, I don't think Canada could have handled a loss in this game,
right.
Losing their national game in the championship to a country, doing what the U.S. and its president has been doing lately. One thing I certainly haven't liked is the national anthems being booed.
Of course,
but
it's disrespectful.
It's a little disrespectful. It's on one hand, you're disrespecting the nation. On the other hand, you're asking fans to stand and respect the anthem of a nation, though that is also threatening to annex another nation. So
I get that, but I guess you have to look at the fact that it's not the entire country that's doing what they're doing.
That's right.
It's
there are better ways to show your disapproval with things than to do that. But to go back to your original question, though, about how the effect that would have on the sports industry, or is there an update in Ajax here?
I don't believe there's an update. It's just still very, very close. There's 300 votes apart.
Incredible. And there's only, 8 ridings to go?
It looks like that is. I do know that the best that the PC can hope for in this election is to be exactly the same as they were in the last election, or perhaps a seat or two down. But it's still going to be a major win for the Progressive Conservatives without question. So Patrice Barnes, who is the PC incumbent in Ajax, who's trailing by 300 votes, is an interesting, a lot of history. She was a former public school trustee for the Durham District School Board, and she's been part of the DBHM Madiba Award system. She's a Universal Women's Network Black Women in Leadership Award. So she's taking care of healthcare investments and things like that, youth services, affordable housing, and all kinds of things. Do you have information there, Chris, on Robert Serjanik, the Liberal candidate for Ajax?
Well, Robert Serjanik, who looks like he might win this riding. PC has won this riding the last 2 elections here. He's a business consultant, small business owner, used to be a part of the senior leadership team at the Durham District School Board. He has experience in strategic leadership and public relations and education. He's got a degree in political science from York University, an MBA. He likes watching football. I feel like I could.
Who doesn't?
I could probably maybe watch the Super Bowl with him. I don't know. But it could be a very exciting day in the Surjanic household today.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's close. It's close. The numbers haven't changed much. So, and I haven't had an update on the Bonnie Crombie situation in Mississauga either. As soon as we get that, we'll certainly.
Oh, there we go.
And there it is. Look at that. There it was. So it's still the same. Bonnie Crombie is in second place by
1,500?
1,500 votes, something like that.
She's catching up a little bit, closing that gap slowly.
Absolutely.
Starting to run out of ridings, though, to draw votes from.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, she was the mayor of Mississauga, right, for quite a while, and came into this, with the intent of changing the world. And we'll see what happens there. It'll be interesting. I also have not heard on how Doug Ford is doing in his riding. I would assume that he's doing okay there. We're waiting for updates on that as well.
We haven't heard from Merritt Stiles as well.
That's right.
What's
That's
happening
right.
over there?
Yeah. David Piccini has taken the lead and has been called in Northumberland, Peterborough South. And he's the incumbent. He's the Minister of Labour, actually, along with Immigration and Training and Skills Development. He was elected first in 2018, which is quite a while. So he's certainly got his feet wet in politics. He grew up in Port Hope, just east of this area of Oshawa. His father's an architect. His mother worked as an educator at Trinity College. His grandfather was born on a farm in Udine in northern Italy. And he immigrated to Canada. And David was very, very active in the soccer industry. He worked, he played soccer, and he worked in a deli. That was his first job. I think that's great for an Italian grocery store. So he's got quite some history, some diverse history. He joined the political scene in 2011 when he became the executive assistant to the Conservative MP, Ed Fast. So a little bit there about the person who has won the seat, re-elected the seat in Northumberland, Peterborough South. Do you have information on Bonnie Crombie?
Bonnie Crombie, who's suddenly in danger of losing not only the election, but her seat in Queen's Park. Who would have thought that would happen? Bonnie Crombie, you mentioned before, she was mayor of Mississauga, took over for Hazel McCallion, who was mayor in Mississauga for, 30, 40 years. She was mayor there for 10 years, took over the leadership of the Ontario Liberal Party at the end of 2023. This was her first election leading the party, and the polls showed that she had a very decent chance, her party anyways, of finishing second, becoming the official opposition. But as you can see the numbers at the bottom of your screen there, the Liberal Party only with 14 seats so far. That is an increase over what they had in 2022 when they finished with 8. But 14, that's not going to do it. That's not going to win you official opposition status. Whereas the NDP, they were polling way behind the Liberal Party, maybe 18% I was seeing, whereas the Liberals were around 29, 30%. But there they are, right? 12 more seats so far projected for the NDP party, and looks like they might be ready to form the official opposition once again.
It looks like very little is changing, actually. A little bit of information on Peter Bethlen-Falvey, who is the incumbent and has won again in Pickering-Uxbridge. And Peter has been the finance minister now since 2018, which is quite a while. His background is actually in finance. He was the president of the Treasury Board and has a lot of experience in business and in finance. Looks like Doug Ford has certainly taken the lead, 13,000 votes to his counterpart from the Liberal Party at 6,000 votes. I don't think that was much of a question. I don't think too many people were wondering if that was going to change or not. So he will certainly be here for another 4 years. And as he said yesterday, for the rest of his life.
He hopes. He hopes.
Yeah, no kidding. So just back to, let me finish up with Peter Bethlen-Falvey, who, as I mentioned, was in the finance industry, president of the Treasury Board, and also focusing on physical sustainability, a lot on healthcare, infrastructure, and economic recovery. He was elected in 2018, re-elected in 22, and re-elected in 2025. So that is Peter Bethlen-Falvey. A lot of interesting people running here, and I said earlier when we started tonight that my congratulations go out to everybody who has decided to pick up the gauntlet and run for an office. It's a very selfless thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And regardless whether you're successful or not in your election campaign, the very fact that you did something to try and make our province better, a better place to live, is very much appreciated. And we're very grateful to everyone who ran.
And it can't be easy to run either, especially with, dealing with social media and some of the backlash you get, just the scrutiny.
Absolutely. It's always been said that if you, no matter how many friends you have, once you're elected, it can only go downhill from there. You just can't please them all, and I guess that's very true. But, are you thinking of running for office anytime, Chris?
No plans right now, Jonathan, of running for office.
But, so there's a little bit of information on Doug Ford here for those of you who are interested. We can touch base on that. Doug was born actually in 1964. I won't do the math on that because that's a lot of work in my head. But his riding has always been Etobicoke North. He's been a leader of the Progressive Conservative Party since 2018. He's got 4 daughters, and he's the son of former Ontario MPP, the second of 4 children. He went to Scarlett Heights Collegiate, briefly attended Humber College, but dropped out without completing her diploma. So just going to show you, anybody can run for office, anybody can get that job, and everybody can do one. All right, so we're going to go to Oshawa now and see what's going on there at the office of the incumbent, Jennifer French, who is...
Looks like she's giving a speech.
No thanks. And it's been really, really cold, but I have said it since that first few days that it has been heartwarming to actually connect with all of our neighbors here in Oshawa. It is such a privilege to door knock. Those of you who have done it, those of you who picked up the phone and talked to people, you know what a privilege it is to hear how people are hurting, to hear how people are proud, to hear how people are imagining better and needing more. That they offered us their truth and their stories, and they offered us their trust, and we did it. And I'm feeling a little bit emotional because it is very nerve-wracking, because there's always so much at stake when it comes to provincial politics. And you know that, I know that, but so do the people in this community. There's a lot to watch right now in terms of politics, internationally, federally, provincially, locally, and they're seeing that government decisions impact their lives. That when they can't find a family doctor, that when their children don't have the services and supports that they need in school, these are decisions made by government. And I know that Doug Ford was so excited to just sweep the whole place. He would love nothing more than to not have me, and not have Margaret, and not have all of the strong New Democrats that have stood against him and stood up for Ontarians. He would love for us not to be going back, but we are. Say that tonight is a night of relief because we're all pretty nervous there. We've had some heavy and important conversations because there's so much at stake. And I was very nervous to imagine that we wouldn't be able to continue to do the work here in this community alongside our neighbors, for our neighbors. But we can continue to do that work. And I want to say that to my staff that do a lot of that heavy lifting in the community, thank you. And all of the volunteers. I know that a lot of you were out door knocking and some of you had to babysit, keep me company. But there were just so many people when I went into the office. There were people that I was meeting for the first time who found their way to our office to help with data entry, to be on the phones, to come in assembling signs. We had students, we had seniors, we had everybody in between, new friends, old friends. It really was remarkable. And as I've been told, this was the biggest campaign for volunteers that we've had. And so this is the 4th election that we have won together here in Oshawa for the NDP, and I'm so and I'll say right now, I hope this is the last winter election. I got really good at hopping through snowbanks, but I don't want to do it anymore. So to everyone, this is a night about us, about Oshawa, about the work that we believe in, about the community that we love and the people that we care about. You would not have given everything that you had this campaign if you didn't genuinely love our neighbors, our new friends, and this community. So thank you so much for all of your hard work. But tonight really is a night to celebrate. So thank you. Go celebrate. And everyone's going to help take down signs, right?
All right, well, that was quite a happy person, Jennifer French in Oshawa.
Congratulations to Jennifer.
So I'm just looking at the numbers at the bottom of the screen, which you can see. The NDP are at 25 votes. Now, where were they in the last election, Chris?
They were 30, what do I have here? 31, the NDP finished with 31, PC finished with 83. The Liberals, so far, are looking to make a fairly significant jump for them from 8 to 14.
Right.
You know, the last 2 elections combined, the Liberals only finished with 15, so this is pretty good for them.
Big for them.
Big for them. And the Green Party, who finished the 22 election with 1, they picked up a second during a by-election.
Right.
This will be the first time, as far as I know, that they will end an election with multiple seats won.
Right. And then we also have an independent, of course.
Yes.
So it's very interesting. The numbers are very interesting. As I said before, there's not a whole lot of change happening, other than we're still watching the Bonnie Crombie situation in her riding. She's still behind by about 1,500 votes now. So that doesn't look very good. As I mentioned before, that was Patrick Brown's mother-in-law who is running against her, which is interesting, quite an interesting twist of things.
Makes for an interesting holiday dinner.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You had some information on Merritt Stiles,
Merritt
right?
Stiles, yes, leader of the NDP, leader of the opposition in Queen's Park. She has won her riding in Davenport, which is downtown Toronto, almost tripling her opposition there from the Liberal Party. Quite the difference from what we're seeing from Bonnie Crombie in Mississauga. Merritt Stiles, actually born in Newfoundland back in 1969, been leader of the Ontario NDP and official opposition leader since February of 23. This is, just like Bonnie, her first election as leader. She was raised on an organic farm in Newfoundland, where her parents were American immigrants.
No, really?
Believe it or not, yeah. Her father was a professor and an energy conservation consultant. She earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Carleton University and first became involved in politics in 1990, canvassing for a local MPP. She also served on the Toronto District School Board, and she was president of the federal NDP party for a while before she decided to step into the provincial ring and win the leadership role back in February of 2023. So congratulations to Merritt Stiles, who it appears will be the leader of the official opposition once again after tonight.
That's right. It certainly looks that way. She has been confirmed, so that's not going to change.
No.
Still sitting on the same side of the fence, but
there's
the way it
Ajax
is.
there.
Ajax numbers are still very, very close, still 300 apart. The Liberals are in the lead. Rob Serjanik is beating Patrice Barnes by about, as I said, 300 votes, 350 votes. Quite interesting.
Only 3 ridings remaining there in Ajax 2 to report.
That's right. So it's going to be a tough one to call.
Starting to run out of time.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. The incumbent for the region of Durham, for Durham Centre actually, is Todd McCarthy, who is back in with a major victory. Congratulations, Mr. McCarthy. For those of you who don't know, Todd McCarthy was actually a partner in the law firm of Flaherty McCarthy with Jim Flaherty, who was the finance minister way back when. And Mr. McCarthy was a lawyer, obviously, at that firm. His key focus now is on Service Ontario as well as consumer and protection laws, AI policy, which is an up-and-coming thing. It's a really, really important element now of politics because artificial intelligence is starting to show up everywhere, and in areas such as social media, as far as election fraud and so forth. So it's an area that's got to be guarded very, very closely. It's very important to us. And Mr. McCarthy was specialized in insurance law. He won an insurance law award back in 2021, and he's very, very passionate about what he does. He loves being in this political arena. And the way he's going, the way his career path has been going, it looks like he's going to be in it for quite a while. So congratulations to Mr. McCarthy for the win in Durham.
Yeah, and, I'm sure it's a happy day in the McCarthy household. His wife, Kathy, must be celebrating right now.
I would think so. I've also got some information on Lauren Coe. Lauren Coe has sort of been around forever, for those of you who know the Whitby situation. He was elected in 2016, and he hasn't turned back. He hasn't stopped since. Before that, Mr. Coe was on the Whitby Town Council, and then he went to the Durham Regional Council for 13 years, which is quite a while. He won this election today by 4,000 votes over his closest rival, Roger Gordon, and he has had some very senior roles in the private sector and in government. He was chief whip for the government from 2018 to 2022, and parliamentary assistant to the premier from 2022 until a month ago when the election was called. So let's go take a look at Mississauga now and see what's happening there. And it looks like, Bonnie Crombie has lost officially, very officially. So that'll be interesting. We'll see how that goes. Sylvia Gualtieri, who is the declared winner now, as I mentioned before, she is the PC candidate, and she has upset that apple cart quite big.
It'll be interesting to see what Bonnie Crombie does after this.
I know.
Does she remain as leader, or?
Well, maybe she can go back to being mayor of Mississauga. I'm not sure how
someone else has the job.
So congratulations to Lauren Coe, as I mentioned earlier. He's done very well. He continues to do very well. He's also very, very involved in the Whitby General Hospital, the Whitby Chamber of Commerce, and the Rotary Club in Whitby. So it's nice to see people who put so much of their time into volunteering at these fantastic venues that need help so badly. All right.
Do we have an update in Ajax yet? That's the big race.
Ajax is close. Yeah, Ajax is very close.
Very close. There it is right there. Sir Janik still in the lead. Oh, we've switched to Devonport. It looks like Sir Janik, though, still in the lead with about 300. And looks like we're not getting any more ridings reporting right now. It's still too close to call. In the 2022 election, the PC candidate, who is the incumbent running now, Patrice Barnes, she won by 2,000 votes. So the Liberal Party making up a big amount of ground tonight. Back in 2018, the Liberals finished in third when the late Joe Dixon, who had been the incumbent in Ajax Pickering for so many years, was part of that big defeat the Liberals had in 2018 when Doug Ford came in and took over the province. This is a big gain for the Liberal Party in the Ajax riding. I certainly didn't see them winning Ajax tonight. I don't know about you, Jonathan.
The jury's still out, but no, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
You're right. It is too close to call. I shouldn't be making any premature statements there, but they're doing a lot better than I thought they were going to do.
Absolutely, without question. It's interesting. I'm not sure what the rules and regulations are as far as Bonnie Crombie, but I guess the Liberals will have to think about a new leader, which is interesting because federally they're doing the same thing. So it's going to be one of those years that'll go down into history books.
They could have leadership elections at the same time. Be very efficient.
You're right. Absolutely. Absolutely, without question. So the numbers are still coming in, but I think you know everything that's going on. We're certainly up to date on this. Lauren Coe, as I mentioned before, has won in Whitby. Okay, so we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with you shortly. Is John Henry, the chair of Durham Region. John, welcome back.
Thank you.
And it's quite the election.
It's been a very interesting evening, not just in Durham, but across the entire province.
Absolutely. The Liberals are up to 80 seats, which is one less or 3 less than what they had last time. The NDP have gone down by 6. The Liberals are up by 6, so I guess they took them away from the NDP. 2 Green and 1 Independent. So that looks like it's going to end pretty close to something like that. So, any surprises?
I was a little shocked by what happened in Ajax. You know, it was. You know, for me, it's a pleasure to work with all our MPPs, but Patrice had done lots of great work for the region. So I'm sorry to see her gone. So, but that is how elections work.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, there may be a recount. Like, you never know.
You never know. Yeah.
It's not often it's that close in Durham region. Like, it's usually a little bit larger gaps in the outcome. So, what's your take on Bonnie Crombie, who is seatless?
I was actually shocked when I saw the numbers come across the screen a little while ago.
Yeah.
You know, it's I don't know what she's going to do next.
I don't know.
She'll have to take some time to figure that out.
Yeah.
But,
and the same with the Liberals. The Liberal Party has to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. Well, it's been a great night. It's gone much faster than we anticipated. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. It's been an interesting night. I thought we'd be here for a couple more hours.
Well, you know, we can always stick around for a while, but we will probably be back in a few months doing this on a federal level. So that'll be great.
That'll be interesting, but you know,
it'll be very interesting.
But for us in the region, it's about working for all 7 ridings. It's as a level of regional government, it's how all the pieces come together.
Right.
So it's not just about Oshawa or Ajax or Pickering or Uxbridge or Brock or Clarington. It's about the region as well. So we've got a great relationship with some of the candidates that won tonight, and I'm going to have to make some new relationship with someone else. So we'll work on that.
So, Chair Henry, do you find that having an MPP in a particular riding in Durham region that is representing a party that has the majority, is that something that's easier to work with than a party that has a minority status, or does it really not make a difference?
Well, having somebody in your in a riding that is the party in power, it has a benefit, and then having somebody that is not in the party in power, in case like Jennifer's been effective on some of the things that we've worked on. The tolls on the 412 and 418. Well, it was great that the Conservatives eliminated those tolls, but she had been a voice on behalf of the region, so she does support.
Yeah, and she does certainly take the credit for that too.
Yes,
she said that many times. But now, very interesting. It'll be interesting too to see how the future, especially after March 4th, when these so-called tariffs come into place. We'll see what happens there. You will certainly have your work cut out for a while in an area that's probably something that is brand new. So
never in my life did I ever think that this would be a topic that we'd have to talk about. Is the challenges of tariffs and for us at the region and at the local municipal levels, we provide the data to the province and to the federal government so they can do what they need to do. But my concern is about the people that are at home tonight watching you on TV. It's about people on both sides of the border and worrying about whether they'll have a job tomorrow.
Very interesting times ahead. So, again, thank you very much for being here. Chris, thank you very much for co-chairing. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And we've learned a lot. Thanks to all of you. Also, thanks to our producers, Doug Boyd, Aaron Miller, Bradley Kelly, and all the volunteers who are here. And from Rogers TV, thank you very much for watching tonight.